Commander Elias Rain stood motionless at the edge of the Aegis Dawn's main observation deck. The stars beyond the reinforced glass shimmered like scattered diamonds, quiet, cold, and watching. Beneath them, the sundering belt stretched in jagged arcs of broken moons, hollowed asteroids, and the corpses of forgotten satellites. A graveyard of alliances and betrayals. Exactly where wars chose to begin. His eyes fixed on a point far beyond visible space, a place only memory reached. "Any word from command?" he asked without turning. Lieutenant Sarah, his operations officer, spoke softly. "They're not sending reinforcements, sir." They cited neutral conflict status. Of course they did. Elias exhaled through his nose. "How many colonies are in that path?" 5 Terran, 6 Volari, 2 independent. All unarmed. He already knew the numbers. He'd been counting them in his head all morning, like names on a gravestone. Time before Rel's fleet reaches Volari space? 4 days. Maybe 3 if they warp-jump past sector drift. He finally turned. His jaw clenched as he moved toward the console. The holomap flickered to life, blue for neutral, red for hostile. The red wave was spreading like blood spilled in water. Any sign of Volari military mobilization? None. "They're not fighters, Commander." "No," he said quietly. "But they are the reason I'm alive." Sarah didn't answer. She didn't need to. Everyone on this ship had heard the story, how a younger Elias, then a junior scout pilot, crash-landed on an unnamed Volari moon after his shuttle lost navigation. How he would have bled out alone if not for a strange clicking voice in the dark. A voice that came from Tyrek. She'd ignored her people's creed of isolation, broken ancient Volari law to drag a Terran into safety. She nursed his wounds, spoke in fragmented English through a cracked translator, and gave him food that tasted like bitter sand and warmth that felt like a second chance. And when the rescue beacon finally worked, she didn't wait for thanks. She just faded into the forest mist. Until now, he hadn't spoken to her since. Elias tapped in a string of commands. "Bring up the encrypted archive, Volari channel, classified beacon Sigma 5. Sarah hesitated. "That signal hasn't been used in 14 years. "Exactly." She input the access code. The screen shifted, revealing a dormant signal matrix, dusty with time, but intact. Elias leaned over the console and keyed in a single line of text. "Det. Calling it in. If you're out there, we need you." No ceremony. No diplomatic language. Just a quiet plea wrapped in code. "Send it." The signal pulsed, silent and unseen, vanishing into space like a whisper into a storm. 2 hours later, Elias stood alone in his quarters. The room was dim, quiet except for the gentle hum of engines. A faded Volari totem, a carved spiral of crystal, sat on a shelf. He'd never told anyone he kept it. The door chimed. "Enter." Dr. Yanavas stepped in. Terran xenocultural specialist. "Friend." "Skeptic." "You're really betting the fleet on a ghost," she said. "No," he replied. "I'm betting on a friend." She crossed her arms. The Volari turned inward after the war. They don't fight. They don't even respond to diplomatic calls. Why would they break isolation now? Because Tyrek is out there. And she remembers. Yana sighed. "You always were too sentimental to be a strategist." That sentiment saved my life. She didn't argue. Instead, she sat across from him. "Do you trust them to be enough?" He looked at her. "No. I trust them to begin something. The rest will follow." A pause. "And if they don't? Then we die trying to defend what matters." The next morning brought static silence. No reply. No signal trace. Only distant echoes of red blips edging closer on the map. "Still no response from Volari frequencies," Sarah said. "And Admiral Rel has just issued a broadcast." "Play it." The holoscreen flashed to life. A broad-shouldered figure in Imperial armor filled the frame, Vortin Rel. His voice was smooth, deliberate. To those who cling to the false piece of the belt, your time is over. Lay down your stations. Surrender your airlocks. And do not rely on relics or relic friendships. No one is coming for you. The feed ended. Elias stared at the blank screen. No one is coming, Sarah repeated. He turned slowly to her. He's wrong. How can you be sure? Because the only reason I'm standing here is that someone once broke every rule to save a human she didn't know. That doesn't just vanish. Later that day, as Elias walked the length of the command deck, crew members paused. Not because of his rank, but because of the look in his eyes. A kind of stillness before something breaks. The calm weight of a man who knows this might be his last gamble. The sundering belt loomed ahead, dead systems filled with ghosts and fractured oaths. Somewhere in that darkness, a woman who had once saved him lived. Maybe. He keyed in his personal log. Tyrek. I don't even know if you're still alive. But if you are, you once taught me that peace isn't weakness. That compassion isn't foolish. The galaxy is about to forget that. I can't stop them alone. But maybe you can remind them. He closed the log. Behind him, the stars were silent. But he knew better than to think silence meant absence. He whispered into the void. Answer me. The Valari outpost drifted quietly above a pale green gas giant, orbiting in silence, unarmed and unguarded. Inside, families worked with soil samples and algae bloom matrices. They lived simply, as their ancestors have for centuries, peaceful, academic, resolute in their distance from war. None of them saw the Krix fleet arrive. It came not with noise, but with absence, erasing stars as its hulls blotted out constellations. The flagship, Harbinger's Claw, lurched forward under the command of Admiral Vortin Rel. In his observation chamber, Vortin leaned over the display of the station. His eyes flicked coldly across the Valari life signs, non-combatants, researchers, juveniles. Unarmed. Insignificant. Yet symbolic. They still cling to neutrality, he murmured. As if it protects them. His adjutant, a scaly creature from the Draxan caste, stepped forward. Orders, Admiral. Send a warning shot across their primary dome. Don't destroy. Not yet. They need to learn that silence has consequences. A torpedo launched. It didn't hit the dome, it didn't need to. It burst in the outer ring of space, shattering sensors and solar collectors. The outpost's lights dimmed. Inside, panic spread like fire. Valari children cried out as systems failed. There was no resistance. There was never going to be. Aboard the Aegis Dawn, Commander Elias Rain read the intercepted broadcast on a red-lit terminal. His face was stone. Valari Outpost 7, Sarah reported, disabled, but not destroyed. No loss of life yet. Krix fleet remains in orbit. No withdrawal. Elias stared at the display, hands locked behind his back. They want to break morale before taking ground. They'll succeed, Yana Voss said from his side. The Valari won't fight back. Then we fight for them. You mean with one cruiser and a scout detachment? She asked. That's not a fight. It's a burial request. I'm not asking for a win, he said quietly. I'm asking for a delay. Yana didn't respond. Elias turned to Sarah. Deploy a forward recon drone. I want to know their jump vectors. Any sign they split the fleet, we punch the flank. Yes, sir. She paused. Still no response to the signal, Commander. He nodded, expecting it. But the silence had started to take weight. The briefing room was dim, lit by a central hologram spinning with red arrows and blue circles, representing outposts, jump routes, weapon ranges. Around the table, Elias and 4 officers sat like ghosts watching their own funeral. They've positioned themselves at a gravity choke point, Lieutenant Aren pointed out. If we warp in too close, they'll intercept in under 90 seconds. And if we stay out of range? Asked another. They glass the colonies before we blink. Yana leaned forward. The only window is a slingshot around the debris belt. It's suicide unless someone knows the asteroid drift pattern by heart. Elias didn't hesitate. I do. The room went silent. He keyed a few commands, rotating the map. 14 years ago, I ran every simulation there is to find a way out of this same corridor. Now we run one to get in. Set the course. Hours later, the Aegis Dawn coasted through dead space. The hull creaked under the tension of nearby gravitational eddies. The asteroid drift glided past like black knives in motion. It was a path so narrow, a single calculation off would shred the cruiser. Elias stood at the helm. Trajectory confirmed, Sarah said. Jump in 60 seconds. Engines? Primed. Reactor holding steady. Elias looked at the stars one last time before nodding. Execute. The jump tore a hole in silence. They exited hyperspace behind the Crick's fleet, unexpected, unscanned. The enemy formation scattered in response. The Aegis Dawn opened with a barrage of precision ion shots, disabling 2 scouts and damaging a cruiser before the enemy turned. Incoming lock-ons, Sarah shouted. Elias didn't flinch. Push forward. Get between them and the outpost. They roared forward, hull burning red with friction. A Crick's destroyer attempted to flank them, but Elias had already anticipated it. Rotate shield coverage, port side thrusters maxed. Release countermeasures. Explosions flared outside the viewport, chaotic, blinding. But they held position. We've bought time, Sarah said, breathless. But that's all. He nodded, voice low. It's all we needed. Suddenly, a soft ping from the encrypted comms terminal. Sarah's eyes widened. Sir? We have a signal. Elias turned so fast his chair nearly fell. Origin? Unclear. It's fragmented. But? Valari's signature. Old-style encryption. He approached the console, heart thudding. The screen flickered, distorted symbols, but unmistakably Valari. A translated line appeared. We remember. Another ping. Then another. Different codes. Different species. All old Terran Alliance protocols long thought forgotten. Yana leaned forward. Are those? Elias stared at the map as new warp signatures began blinking into existence, small, scattered, not military, but real. One after another. A rogue Zarnak freighter. An outlaw medical cruiser. An old Valari diplomatic ship, light-scarred but burning bright. Each bore a different flag, but all were responding to one call. Sarah turned. Sir, they're coming. Elias swallowed hard. Then we hold this line until the galaxy remembers why. The silence before a battle never truly felt silent. Inside the Aegis Dawn, you could hear the hum of stressed reactors, the distant thud of booted feet, the faint hiss of pressure calibrations. But beneath it all was something deeper, tension, coiled and ready to snap. Commander Elias Rain stood before the main viewport, arms locked behind his back. Out there, the stars had rearranged into something new. The Allied fleet was arriving. Not in formation. Not military. But they came. One ship blinked in, scarred from years of deep-haul mining, its hull patched with different metals. Another bore faded insignias from a war 2 generations old. A medical vessel with mismatched engine outputs. A carrier that once ferried refugees now floated into position like a veteran returning to war one last time. And at the center of them all, gleaming despite its age, was a Valari ship unlike any he had ever seen. Slender, glass-like hull. Fractal energy rings rotating around it like orbiting moons. It shimmered in soft pulses, almost alive. Tyrek, Elias whispered. Sarah looked up from her console. She's requesting direct communication. Patch her through. The hologram shimmered, and there she was, older, her exoskeletal plates duller, facial ridges etched with age. But the eyes were unchanged. Soft, sharp, knowing. Elias Rain, Tyrek said, voice filtered through a smoother translator than before. You came, he said, almost disbelieving. We never forgot, she replied. And neither did they. Her image flicked aside as the communication split into a multi-party channel, different species, voices chiming in, overlapping in language and tone. A Zarnak traitor, you saved my cousin on Telos Prime. I repay now. A human colonist from an independent world, you brought us medicine when no one else would. We haven't forgotten. A synthetic AI-controlled vessel, long thought decommissioned, debt recognized. Protocol, protection engaged. Elias looked around the command deck. Every officer was frozen in place, listening. Hope didn't shout. It didn't sing. It just showed up. He cleared his throat. We're outnumbered, outgunned, and half of you are flying scrap with weapons older than I am. There were chuckles across the line. He continued, voice steady. But every one of you is here because you believe in something Rel can't understand, loyalty not bought, alliances not written in treaties, debts that matter. He has numbers. We have memory. Tyrek answered. Then let's remind him. The Krik's fleet reacted instantly. Their scouts picked up the warp signatures. The formation tightened. Shields flared. On the Harbinger's claw, Admiral Vorton Rel frowned at the new readings. Identify the vessels, he ordered. His officer hesitated. Not military. Civilian class. Multiple species. No registered fleet designation. Rel narrowed his eyes. Patch me into their open channel. The moment the channel opened, Elias's voice greeted him. Admiral Rel. I believe you told the galaxy no one was coming. Rel's lips curled. A collection of scavengers and washed-up diplomats? This is your answer? They're more than that. They're every reason you'll lose. Rel cut the channel. Target the Aegis Dawn. Wipe it out. The battle began with a scream of metal and light. The Aegis Dawn surged forward, flanked by a patchwork shield of allies. Drones spilled from Elias's ship, jamming Krik's lock-ons. A Valari beam sliced a Krik's frigate's flank in one clean stroke. A mining barge turned on its repurposed excavation lasers, drilling through a destroyer's engine port. A refugee vessel deployed old Earth-designed decoy satellites, confusing the Krik's targeting system. But it wasn't just tactics, it was chaos controlled by trust. Elias and Tyrek coordinated movements like old dancers, speaking in half-sentences in instinct. Rotate them left, open their flank. On your mark, Elias. Yanavas called out, we have 2 Krik ships pulling off the main line, weak point at grid 12. Redirect all allies within that arc, Elias snapped. The order spread like fire. Krik's vessels began falling. But so did their own. A small freighter exploded after taking a direct hit. The channel went silent. No screams. Just gone. Another ship lost engines and drifted into the debris field, venting atmosphere. Elias felt each loss like a weight on his chest. But the line held. And then. Sir, Sarah said breathlessly, enemy flagship is moving toward us. It's isolated. A pause. Then Tyrek's voice, now, Elias. He knew the plan. The asteroid belt nearby had long been dismissed as navigational suicide. But Elias remembered every drift pattern, every echo ping. He routed the fleet around the Krik's flagship, drawing it into the belt's edge. As predicted, Rel followed. What he didn't expect was what came next. Several of the oldest ships, presumed non-combatant, turned sharply and activated hidden emitters. Mining projectors, plasma cutters, and graviton locks locked onto the flagship's hull. The asteroids around it, unstable and ready to fall, now had just enough pull. The debris field collapsed inward. Chunks of rock the size of towers slammed into the Krik's hull. The Harbinger's claw listed hard, its shields buckling. Elias's voice returned, calm. You called them relics. But you forgot, relics built the galaxy you're trying to steal. Rel's final transmission crackled through, furious, but brief. This isn't over. Then silence. The flagship was gone. Afterward, the battlefield floated in eerie calm. Ships moved like ghosts among wreckage, rescuing survivors. Fires burned in quiet rings of oxygen and flame before dying out. Elias stood on the deck, watching the cleanup begin. Tyrik's hologram returned. You risked everything on a message. I didn't, he said. I risked it on you. She tilted her head. Then perhaps you are not such a terrible strategist. He smiled. Yana Voss walked in, datapad in hand. High Command wants a full report, she said. They're calling it an unsanctioned engagement. Let them. Want me to write it? Elias glanced at the fleet outside, dozens of mismatched ships now united by a shared debt and a battle they never expected to survive. No, he said. Let the galaxy write this one. Later that night, Elias returned to his quarters. He placed the old Valari totem on the desk. Then beside it, he laid something new, a fragment of Tyrik's ship plating, engraved with one phrase. A promise kept. They called it the Concord Echo. Officially, it was designated as Operation Sundering Restoration, a name coined by Terran High Command to downplay the truth. But to the people who lived through it, it was something else entirely. A memory turned into movement. A forgotten kindness returned in force. A proof that history, when honored, had teeth. Elias Rain didn't care for the press briefings or political fanfare. He spent the morning after the battle walking the wreckage corridor. The Aegis Dawn had survived, but not untouched. Sections of hull were scorched black, several decks sealed off due to pressure breaches. They'd lost 9 crew. Names that would never fade. As he walked past engineering, Chief Varun stood up from a crawlspace and wiped oil from his brow. We're stable, Commander. Not pretty, but holding. Elias nodded. Pretty was never the point. Varun chuckled and returned to his repairs. Further down, he entered the med bay. Yana Voss sat beside a Valari child, softly translating instructions to a healing drone. The child clutched her hand, terrified but safe. Tyrik stood nearby, observing. She wouldn't let go of Yana, Tyrik said gently, even though the translator was broken. Elias looked at the girl, then at Yana. She's seen things no child should. So have we, Yana replied. He gave a soft nod and stepped outside. Later, a signal from the Valari Leadership Council came through, tentative, diplomatic. For the first time in decades, they were requesting a meeting. Tyrik stood beside Elias in the comms chamber. They see you differently now, she said. Not just as Terrans. But as something else. Relics with bite? Elias offered. No, she said. Stories that prove true. The message loaded, an elder Valari speaking in solemn, translated cadence. For too long we believed distance was protection. Today, your actions reminded us that memory is also defense. We open our skies. We welcome your presence. Let history move forward together. Elias remained quiet for a beat. Tyrik broke the silence. You should respond. He exhaled. Tell them we never left. Days passed in restoration. Debris fields were cleared. Crick's war remnants scuttled. The strange fleet, dozens of unrelated ships with no shared flag, remained. They didn't ask for medals. They asked for corridors to be rebuilt. For survivors to be cared for. For the stories to be told, properly. Elias sat in the central conference chamber with captains of every responding vessel. The air was heavy with the scent of recycled oxygen, oil, and sweat, but also something subtler, pride not born of victory, but of presence. An old trader with one eye stood up. Back then, you gave me safe passage through a blockade for a shipment of anti-radiation meds. Didn't ask for payment. Just said, do what's right. Well, this was that. Another captain, reptilian and towering, adjusted a chipped pauldron. You helped evacuate our nursery ship when no one else would. We owed that. Elias didn't speak right away. He scanned the room. You didn't know anything, he said. But you came. And now the galaxy knows. Back on the bridge, Sarah approached him with a message tablet. Report from Terran Command. They've reconsidered the engagement. You've been offered reinstatement to Central Fleet leadership. He read the message, then handed it back. Decline. Sarah blinked. Sir? This wasn't about command. It was about showing we still matter. That humans can be more than weapons. That trust, once earned, doesn't decay. She smiled faintly. Then what now? He stared at the stars. Now, we rebuild. Not just ships, relationships. That evening, Elias walked alone along the open deck of a refurbished Volari station. New light panels blinked into life. Above him, ships passed in slow orbits, human, alien, and everything in between. Tyrek joined him, her long frame casting a spindly shadow across the rail. You still carry the totem, she said. I still carry the moment, he replied. A soft hum of acknowledgement. Then silence. Finally, she spoke. When I found you on that moon, I thought it was just an act of defiance. One moment. One life. Now I see, small things echo. They always do, Elias said. We just don't always live long enough to hear the sound return. Tyrek handed him a small, folded data slip. These are Volari access codes. You're welcome here. Permanently. He raised a brow. Even after I violated their neutrality? She tilted her head. You reminded them why neutrality alone doesn't build futures. He accepted it. You know, he said, I still owe you. Tyrek's eyes shimmered in the starlight. Then remember me, she said. That's all we ever ask. In the weeks that followed, a new station was commissioned at the center of the Sundering Belt. Multi-species cruise. Mixed technologies. A place born not from treaty but from response. They called it Concord Station. Elias Rain didn't command it. He didn't have to. But every morning, he walked the central ring with a quiet purpose. He greeted passing engineers, nodded to children speaking 3 languages at once, paused to share memories with old fighters who once answered a signal because of a debt. Because of a man. Because of a moment. The stars hadn't changed. But now, they watched differently. And every time a beacon flared in the dark, there was always the chance, no matter how faint, that someone, somewhere, would answer. Because once, they helped a human. And years later, an entire fleet came back.